there's a letting go occurs by seeing correctly. Letting go is a byproduct of seeing what's actually happening. It's like if you hold a hot iron ball in your hand and your hand is burning, but you don't know why, and you have a closed fist, and someone says, "Oh, well, just open your hand." And when you open your hand, you see the hot iron ball, and you naturally you'll drop it, and it's understood why your hand was burning all this time. That's how this is. It's like we wouldn't open our hand to look and see the cause. We just wanted the burning to stop, but it needed to be seen. And when you saw there was the error, and you naturally let it go.
Hello, Eshwar.
How are you?
I'm very good. And you?
I'm doing well.
It's really great to meet you. And I'm so happy to
Like,
introduce Eshwar Segobind to my audience. Very welcome.
good to be here.
The podcast is called Awakening Now. So you can imagine it's all about awakening, different views, different paths, different perspectives. So to start with, I would like to ask you your definition of awakening. How do you see it?
Mm. It's in my experience, it's dropping away of all the conceptual put togetherness that we have of a world and a self that engages with it.
Mm. Beautiful. And how did that happen? What happened?
That's a pretty interesting story.
Oh,
Um,
let's hear it.
so all of this started back in 2017, when I went into a treatment facility for drug and alcohol addiction. Um, and there's a lot of nuances to the stories, but if I can streamline it, I would say everything with me and life prior to that, or up until that point, was always about work and engaging in life and doing all of these things uh, that we generally do. You know, we get up in the morning, we go to a job to get money, to get things, and so much of our identity is built around that it defines us. And we don't really, for me anyways, I didn't really know anything outside of that. And while I was doing that stuff, I didn't even know that there was another way of being,
Hmm.
another way of existing. You know, it's like what you don't know, you don't know. It was one of those things very much. And when I went to the treatment facility, we didn't have any engagement, so no emails, no phones, with like the outside world, no family contact, nothing.
Hmm.
So later on, while I was there, that stuff came, but initially it was that. And when I was in there, all of that stuff was how I defined myself. And now I didn't have any of that. So I was left with, well, what do I do? And who and what am I then outside of all of this stuff? So in the treatment facility, going through some of their processes and programs, it was a 30-day program, but I was there for about 17 days. That's when I started to see like some of the root covers of my identity itself, which were resentment and anger. And
Hmm.
going through some of the therapies there, um, one of the things that really sunk in and really hit home was resentment and how that mechanism worked, and how I was the one that was creating my own resentment. So I was creating a story within myself, say a particular person, then I would have an emotional reaction to that story, which would manifest into a physical reaction to the actual person itself. All along, the person had no idea what was going on. That story was completely inside my head. And when I saw that, something just kind of clicked, and it was like, whoa, you're causing your own resentments. Why not just stop? And when I realized that, it felt like the entire world was kind of lifted off my shoulders. And that was the floodgates that really opened to all of this, because that was probably one of the biggest blocks and one of the doors that was shut in front of my face and I really couldn't see.
Hmm.
And as that kind of opened, then a lot of things started to happen. I got into some meditative practices, um, and a lot of experiences. I mean, energetic experiences where, it felt like a bolt of lightning shot through the earth, up through my feet, up through my body, out through the top of my head, and it felt like God touched my brain, and I just kind of like shook. But it was a energetic reset to this physical system that wiped out all of the concepts for about an hour, and everything was still functioning within that, but still everything kind of coalesced back into day-to-day life. But I was still doing a lot of the practices because all of this was while I was that one actually happened after I left the treatment facility and I was staying in a recovery house in Lancaster County. I stayed up there until August, and that's where a good bit of this stuff occurred in a few months. Excuse me. Um, yeah, and you know, once everything opened up, stuff started to flow and fall away. And I went through the AA process, and they have a step program, a 12-step program. And a lot of that is this dissolution of self. It's the ideas and concepts that we have of us, and they kind of come full view. And for me, when they started to come full view, they have this process where you identify defects of character. And the thing that dawned on me, I had all these personality types and traits. So not necessarily multiple personalities, but it's one way to kind of understand it is the way that I am as a son with my mom and the way that I am as a husband with my wife, they're it's it's two different things. So they're different uh ways of being depending on the environment itself. And each one of those ways of being has a personality. So their expectation of what a good husband is supposed to be, an expectation of what a good son is supposed to be, of what a good father is supposed to be. When I am with my friends, what a good friend was supposed to be. And one of the things that kind of dawned on me was all those are just ideas. All those things are just concepts. So what's here outside of all of that? And if this character needs to be fixed, it's a character. Why not just do away with the character itself and see what's really here? So it was akin to, instead of cutting off branches on a tree, why not just uproot the whole tree? And that was the identity structure itself. And there were many other practices that I did, but primarily something led to I was like done looking externally. Even though this was only a few months, I understood that conceptually, anything that I could conceptualize about this world was of my own doing. I was making it up. And the only thing I could regard as real or how I would know myself would be within my memory, things I could remember about me. So I started to go back into my memory bank of what it is and how I consider myself to be, to kind of like find a path of like what am I? I don't accept ideas and thoughts as uh, a sufficed answer because it's all made up stuff.
Hmm.
So let's see how I'm making up myself within my own mind. And it was like, you know what? I don't know what the Buddha's talking about. I don't know what all these people are talking about. The only thing I know is me and my experience of me and how I find myself, which is all in here. So I started to go back in memory. And, when how old I was at that time was in my 30s and then in my 20s. And, in when I was like 17, then I was 9, and then I got to a memory when I was about 4 or 5, and it's the only thing I could remember. The memory itself wasn't super important, but it was like I'm 4. What was here before this memory? And everything just kind of like the mind couldn't answer because it didn't know what was before it. And I just stayed there, just focusing on my breath, just relaxed. And this image of me, this it just looked like this like my 4-year old face. I was looking at it directly, and then it turned. And when it turned, it was hollow, empty, nothing. And the minute the mind saw that, or however the totality of my experience was being experienced at this point, it felt like a rubber band was pulled taut, and then someone just cut it, and all the tension just unraveled, the entire thing from the manifested world all the way back. Everything just ceased, and then it became self-knowing of what this entire thing was. There's something that just cannot be spoken about, and even saying that it's something is saying too much. Then there is this sense, then a sense of, then a sense of me, and then this entire manifestation. There is in between, before it gets to the me and the manifestation, it's experience, experiencing experience, if that's a thing. And then there's me and the entire manifestation itself. And it's a complete fabrication and interpretation of experience itself. It's not to say that all of this isn't happening, but it just is not happening the way that I was experiencing it, as being a individual experiencing individual experiences. Now it's now they're maturing of insights that came with that. But when that happened, um, I mean, all the things that we chase after, or I chased after at up until that point, stopped. There was like a 98% reduction of grasping to anything, because it was immediately understood that what I was holding on to was empty in itself, because it was a mental fabrication.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. So life brought you to the point where the rubber band snapped. Couldn't go any further. Yeah.
Right.
And you said some very, very right thing that a lot of listeners or a lot of seekers may miss. And it's that you had to stop looking externally. You had to turn attention internally. That's when it started to unravel.
Mm-hmm. There is uh, it's almost as though that needs to be exhausted. And there's a subtleness to this, because people will hear this, and when they hear it, they think that they have to exhaust it to get it. And in them thinking that, there's a subtleness to an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
That if they do this, that will happen. When I went through this process, I had no idea about any of this. I didn't even know what I was looking for or what I was looking at. All I knew was I wanted to see what this was all about. Actually, it wasn't even that. I was just going through the process. I was just going through these things, and naturally it was like looking and seeing, but not to be afraid to continue to look, because one of the key things that came about was that I did not know.
Right.
Because we claim knowledge by way of conception and by way of ideas and concepts, and the way we form all of these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. how it was experienced for me was that all of that was made up. So even my thinking is made up. It's not to dismiss or throw it out. It's just a recognition of that. So if I can rely on the concepts themselves, then I have to go with my direct experience of what's here. And no interpretation of that experience will do the experience itself justice. They're pointers to it. So I was like, well, no concepts will do. So let's see what happens. And when you don't have the comfort of reassuring yourself inside of your mind all the time by keep talking to yourself, you're left pretty wide open. And for me, a lot of fear came, but I was okay with that because again, the fear will tell a story about something that it doesn't know to prompt me to believe something it doesn't know and I don't know. So why not go and see?
Hmm.
And that was the gist of it. That's what unraveled this entire thing in that way. And there was a lot of maturing of these insights and even the experience themselves in the coming years, um, because it was necessary for the integration life itself. Because these two things aren't two things. That experience of the way things are is no different than the way things are. Even though we have this conventional understanding of life and this world, it's a interpretation and an overlay of what's already here.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, very interesting. Yeah, a lot of people are waiting or looking for that experience, but I mean, life for you just brought you to the point, and
Yeah.
it's unrepeatable. It's unique. It worked for you.
Right. And I think that's one of it can be a trap unintentionally when people
Mhm.
hear these things because the minute they hear it, they're like, if I do that or follow what he did, I'll get it.
Yes,
And it
but
isn't that way.
it, it is in a way because if they follow what you did, something will happen. That's true. But what you did, it wasn't like particular thing. It was that you followed your inner desire to know, your inner
Right.
calling to answer your own questions. That's what you did.
Well, that's what everyone has. And
Exactly.
that's the thing I point to is not don't follow what I did. Come in touch with your own intuition. And that will guide you if everyone looks to what they hear, it gives hope that it's a possibility.
Right.
But everyone has, if they choose to, that's up to them. They have the path within themselves. It's nowhere else. And that's it. Once you touch into it and you intuit towards that, you have all of the access. No one else, because we're the ones that have to do the work. Nobody can do the work for us.
Exactly. I love that you came we came to this point in the conversation where it was clearly said because this is the biggest confusion for some seekers. Like they want
Mm-hmm.
your experience, but they have their own experience. And just to turn that look inwards rather than somebody else's experience. That's the shift. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Mm. So you guide people now, right? Is that correct?
I I do from time to time. So I had set up all of this stuff to kind of integrate because a lot of people was contacting me from all over the world, and it was getting very difficult to navigate um, time zones to speak
I
with
know what
people.
you mean. Yeah, yeah.
And I still work and I have a family and stuff. So it's not all that I do. So the time that I do have to kind of facilitate some guiding, it takes all of that to schedule it. But the type of work that I do, I'm an electrician, an emergency electrician, and usually our busy season is in from the spring and it'll last to early winter, and then we'll have a slow spell. And usually in the slow spells is where I'll sit and talk with people, or we'll schedule stuff. For doing our busy season, I don't do anything at all. I do the work stuff and family stuff and that's pretty much it. If I have time, I'll reach out to some people and take a phone call or something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, for the next foreseeable future, I probably wouldn't be available to really talk to anyone. The weekends, I'm usually pretty good for about an hour or two, and then we do these kind of interviews.
Mhm.
But that's the extent because you know it's this entire thing has been so fascinating to me because it's like everyone has this access. There is nothing, absolutely nothing special about me to have seen any of this. It's like it's right here. We just don't accept it. So it's like I don't feel like I have anything really to give anyone because I
Mhm.
can't give you what you already have. It's just we're not seeing it. So
Mhm. But you can point with your words the attention to the right spot. That's a gift.
right. Well,
Yeah, look
I,
here.
I, well, the LU stuff was super helpful too in the after the initial shift, particularly the cessation experience, because I had no context for any of this
Hmm.
whatsoever.
Hmm.
And going through that process, it was like, that was the first two shifts were one was an energetic reset. The other one was a mental reset. So, but there's still the physical part of life. And
Right?
sometimes we could get so caught up in spirituality, we just throw away the physical itself, which is the manifested world, all of these things here that we're engaging in. So LU was pretty cool with that stuff to say, well, your sense perceptions is how you engage in the world, and the sense of self is a misapprehension of the perceptions woven together, the knot of perception. So that was also a process to be untied in all aspects. So energetic, it was untied, mind, it was untied, and now chop wood, carry water, right? Life
Hmm.
itself.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Like everyday life is not going anywhere. You still have obligations and bills to pay and work and family and cats
Right.
and whatever. Everything,
It's
everything's
the
still here.
grasp,
Yeah.
the holding on to those things is what was let go of. They were all perfectly fine to begin with. See,
Mm,
life never changed. It was the perception that it needed to change that was what was changed. Just the
exact.
perception of what was happening. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a different view from a different
Right.
from a different view. And without the narrative
Yeah.
in the mind, the voice in the head tells different things. Or it's much more quiet. Rather than complaining,
Yeah.
it can be appreciating.
Yep. It's free to do exactly what it does. There is no it was never binding me and I was never holding on to it. Um, even though it seemed that way. It was just it was just that. It was always doing its thing. I didn't need to stop it, but it needed to pause for a second for me to see that I didn't need to stop it. That's just the
Mhm.
process that was happening. Our entire attention, at least mine, was so focused on the conceptual part of life and this world, the interpretive part of it, that became the entirety of my experience, the self. When this is seen, the self is an aspect of experience, not the entirety of experience. So it wasn't even to throw that away. It has a use and function conventionally, and that's about it. That's it.
Beautiful. And what would you say to this seeker that is still looking and trying and watching these videos and many more videos trying to get there somewhere? What's your
I would
advice?
say I would say effort is required until it isn't anymore. It is needed to look until you either see or break through, but also there's a intuition. There's so many aspects to this and none of them are wrong. And that's the thing that we come to understand, because everything has a step on the way to kind of show us, because eventually we will get out of those ruts that we're in, if we have the capacity to remain open. Any position that we take is a stopping point. It's a place of holding. So it's to relax these positions that we have within ourselves and remain in the senses, because those are clearer guides. That's the means to which the individual is taking in this world and interpreting it for themselves. But if we can remain there and just be with the senses, be with the seeing, and enjoy the vivid colors, and then the enjoy will become apparent. And hear the sound itself, and the hearer will become apparent. And when those things become apparent, you'll find yourself. When you find yourself, well, that's the thing that isn't. Stay with that. And everyone has that access to it. And when you stay with that, relax your conception of what that is. And that's where that's as far as words are going to take you. The rest, I feel any pointing will only get you there. And the rest of that way is up to the person that's listening, hearing, thinking, seeing. The one that thinks that it thinks, the one that thinks that it hears, all of that. And to me, it's a simple process with our own faculties, but we don't think it's that simple. It has to be more. And it can be. But that's the doorway you walk through. That's the gateless gate you go through. It's you.
So with this shift for you, in your experience, what's the biggest difference from before to now? Before you even knew about this? What's like the most visible, the biggest difference in normal everyday life? I'm curious.
The attachment to outcomes. The attachment to outcomes. It's the biggest shift. It's these expectations that would have been placed, and it's not even so much the expectation, but the outcome of the expectation is what's held on to. The result of what planning was, it's what's held on to. All of that process stopped. I think one of the biggest shift is understanding that there isn't anything outside of what's happening right now. The past isn't a thing that created now, and it isn't a thing that's creating the future. It is from this position where a past could be created and a future can be projected. But both of those things are mental constructs, and it's not to negate anyone's experience of how they were, but it's just to see it for what it is. And once that was understood, this whole time thing, this conceptual and felt experience of time shifted. And it's just, and even saying that it's just this isn't something that's really accurate either, but it points directly to our experience. And when we look at what this is, it's a totality of the experience right now. And there isn't anything else outside of this. And then there's convention in the way we operate within concepts. We operate within concepts. So it's seeing these processes for what they are. And there isn't an error in perception being made about what they are, because it's seen exactly for what it is. There is no more past. There is no holding on to the stories of all of these things that, created trauma, but there's also having an appreciation for them. They led to this point, and then this point you see that they never led anywhere because there isn't anything outside of this. That's the catch-22 with it. And it's a felt experience, because prior to that, we literally felt as though what happened in my past is the reason for the way that I am now. And when you come upon this experience and you see this for what it is, that was not the case. It is not so. So there's a letting go occurs by seeing correctly. Letting go is a byproduct of seeing what's actually happening. It's like if you hold a hot iron ball in your hand and your hand is burning, but you don't know why, and you have a closed fist, and someone says, oh, well, just open your hand. And when you open your hand, you see the hot iron ball, and you naturally you'll drop it, and it's understood why your hand was burning all this time. That's how this is. It's like we wouldn't open our hand to look and see the cause. We just wanted the burning to stop, but it needed to be seen. And when you saw, there was the error, and you naturally let it go. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
this process was. The means of apprehension through the self is this grasping aspect, and we
Mm-hmm.
just will not let go of the self.
Yeah,
And
it's my precious, isn't it? The Lord of the Rings, my precious. I'm not gonna throw it out. Yeah, but
right,
that's how
and
it
that
feels. No, my story. What will I be without my story? What will I be without my pain? Or how can I let them
mhm.
get on and hurt me or something? Yeah.
And nobody's saying to throw it away or you have to give it up. All is being suggested is let, let it go for 1 second, 1 instant, and see what's actually here, what's happening. And then
Mm.
it makes sense. But
Hmm.
it can only be pointed to. You're the one that's going to need to open your eyes and look. You know,
Yes.
there's a lot of pretty cool analogies. It's like somebody who thinks that they're blind, but they have their eyes closed, and somebody's trying to describe light to them. And, you know, the person that's describing light is saying, just open your eyes and you'll see. And the person that thinks that they're blind with their eyes closed is saying, well, just show me. And you see, well, how am I going to show you if you won't open your eyes? You know, why won't you open your eyes and look? Because there's not anything wrong with you.
Mm.
Not a bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's just these ideas that we have.
So the biggest challenge, I think, is letting everything be as it is and just seeing it as it is. Because the mind is trained to look for a fault and trained to try to fix the fault. So anything we are
Mhm.
looking at, we are looking through that lens of, there's something wrong, either with me or with the world or with somebody next to me, and it's wrong. But that looking or that just taking a look at what is here kind of stops that mechanism for a little bit. There's nothing wrong. Just look what is already here. Like, don't try to run away or fix it. And that's the moment when magic can happen. But first time or repeatedly. But it's that stopping and looking. And yeah, different view comes in.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm a for like my work. I'm pretty technical, and you know, I get into like all of the little nitty gritty stuff. So when it came to this aspect of looking through me and identity itself, I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. So I did all of and at the time I didn't know that's what this stuff was. I did all the emotional stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, it just came naturally as those were things to kind of see. And then again, the letting go process, just like the resentment thing and seeing the mechanism of that, then that entire process itself stopped. And for me, it was important when the mechanism came up was the recognition of what was happening. So if it does come again, it's seen and it's let go of. There is no more like that error isn't made again. You know, and it's not to say that we don't feel emotions or we can't get angry or we can't, you know, feel whatever it is that's going on. Is when it's felt in its entirety. But there isn't. I remember I used to hold on to anger for, well, sometimes it feels like years. Now it's like if something happens, you just kind of feel it and you know, let it pass through instead of holding on to it, you know. And not perfect by any means. You still, some stuff still comes up, and you may say something, I may say something that's just out of the way, but it's rectified immediately with any and everyone. It's like prior to this, it wasn't even, these things weren't even considered. The self was so propped up with all of these emotional baggage, and particularly with anger, because
Hmm.
there was this justification that it needed to be right. And because it's right, the anger is justified.
I
It
see.
didn't
Uh-huh.
matter in what aspect. So it was that was like one of the most powerful ones that actually broke through all of this, because most of life that I engaged with prior to that, that was the lead emotion with all of it. But it's a protection mechanism too for myself. It wouldn't allow me to be vulnerable. So
Well, I would ask you, what is your message? What is your main message? Like, what do you want people to know,
that is a
seekers to know?
I, I think the main thing is it's a possibility for yourself, and the work is always done by you, not by anybody else. You know, we can we can only point. You're the one that has to go and look. But it's accessible. It's not in a cave somewhere. It's right here, and you have access. That's it.
Great, great message. I agree.
Yeah.
And it's so much more accessible these days because there are so many people pointing to the same that it's no longer some kind of secret hush hush. Maybe we need to read some sacred texts or
Yeah.
something. Something becoming very natural and available. And I think that's the beauty of more and more people waking up to this and expressing it and sharing it in their own ways, in their own words. Well, yes, we've been talking about that it's available now, and there are so many people waking up to this and sharing in their own ways, in their own style, in their own words. And it's not like it used to be before. You have to read a special book or go somewhere to the mountain or meet some guru and they're gonna show you the light. The light is within. We can find it now. I mean, it's so close. Even if you close your eyes, it's there.
Hmm.
It's there.
Yeah. I feel we're in the age of information and technology and intellect, and um, going through this process, uh, particularly when people coin it spiritual, they want to kind of shy away from that stuff and uh, kind of meditate and think that that's all that there is. But the intellect can be used to see through itself by seeing these processes for what they are, and we have access to a lot of information now. Gurus and guides and all of that stuff, they have their place, and some people can point and guide, but we also are to be accountable for ourselves, because we have an intuition within ourselves that they can kind of point out for us, and we know what to do. Sometimes it takes courage to look and walk from an external source back in towards ourselves. And it can be a little scary, but that's where surrender comes. And when those things come up, that decision is made by you and you alone. No one can surrender for you. They can only show you how to get to the space where surrender will come up. We're the one that makes the decision whether we're going to go and
Mm.
look and walk through that door to see what's really on the other side, or we're going to believe what people have been telling us our entire life to say that, oh, there isn't anything there. And we accept that with belief, and we don't go look and find out for ourselves. I think most people who are really genuine about this, that's what they encourage everyone to do, is go look and find out, because You've been told what it is your whole life, but no one, it's not even that you believe it, it's telling you what it is doesn't serve a purpose. Experiencing what's actually there is how it makes sense. That's what's self-knowing. That's how it reveals itself to the one who goes and sees. And language itself can only get you but so far, because we say it's naturally dualistic, because we have to use points of reference to convey these ideas. And the first thing I've heard, well, who went to go look and see? Because all you're talking about is no self. Who saw no self? And it isn't that someone went and see it. I can tell you exactly who saw it. The thing that went to go look and see saw that it wasn't a thing. It itself got disillusioned, but that makes no sense to anyone until you go and experience that for yourself.
Yeah. So basically, you cannot be convinced intellectually. You have to look for yourself, see it, experience. That's the only conviction you really need. That's the only confirmation you ever need.
All doubt whatsoever, because it's your direct experience that's confirming it for you. That's it.
Yeah. So whoever is listening or watching right now, look for yourself. It's already here. It's already here. What's required is stopping. Just for a little bit. Stopping wherever you think you need to do or wherever you think you need to get to or achieve. And that nothing reveals itself.
Yeah. Well, all the cliches start to make sense. You know, stop and smell the roses. Come back to your senses. You know, those things.
Yeah. And I think Beatles were very right when they said,
Right.
let it be. When they sang, let it be. And when the space opens, it's just really delicious to just be.
Well, what else is there to do?
Have a conversation, have a laugh, enjoy.
And that's it. Free. And, you know, not caught up in all of the other stuff. And we just see things for what they are and we keep it moving. That's all.
That's beautiful. And do you have any final words or final pointer?
It would be just this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.